I am on mute. Okay, let's try this again. I think I'm going to get a t shirt that says, "You're on mute." Okay, welcome back to the main stage, everyone. I hope in the last hour you guys have had some fun listening to the Lucasfilm and ILM folks talk about behind the sequence of the Bad Batch. Again, Star Wars nerds unite. I had my lightsaber out. I may or may not have. I hope you guys had fun looking at that. And then also the Get in the Door folks. Again, Lucasfilm just really dropping a lot of knowledge today. So we're so pleased to have them as a partner. Now, I've been really excited all morning. We heard from our friends in Africa to put the Afro back in Afro animation. We heard from women, powerful women panel. We heard from different studios about what it means to get in the door. And so, one of the studios, who really shall remain nameless, but they brought it to our attention that they felt a sense of responsibility that there wasn't enough diversity on the path to becoming a producer. So you now will have the pleasure of hearing from an amazing panel. We have news to report from Cartoon Network with one of these panelists. I think you're going to have a really good time with them. And of course, there are two women in the producer track that I'm excited to see. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome back for the second year in a row, John Cambides, who's a producer at Netflix and at a Cinesite prior and a second year alum from Canada for AfroAnimation. So welcome back, John, and have fun.
Thank you, Rio. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. Before I introduce our panelists, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Warner Brothers Animation, DreamWorks Animation, Cinesite Studios, and Toon Boom. These are major players in the industry, and we're so happy to have their support. Okay, let's start off with our panel. First off, we have, now hopefully I pronounced it right, Shabrea Cleaver. She is an executive at DreamWorks Animation, and she has had a very successful career in the industry. She's produced such films as, worked on such films as Kung Fu Panda, Trolls, How to Train Your Dragon, so some of the top films in our industry. Next up, we have Fred Siebert. He is a president and CEO of Fred Films. He's also was a co-founder of MTV, which I found fascinating doing my research. He's been in the industry for many years and has really built the careers of so many professionals that all of us have worked with. So welcome, Fred. Next up, we have Connie Thompson. Connie comes from DreamWorks. I'm not DreamWorks, sorry, from Cinesite Studios. I've worked with Connie in the past. She has worked on multiple projects, from animated feature films, from some of Disney's most iconic projects like Beauty and the Beast and Atlantis. And she's currently a feature producer for Cinesite Studios out of the UK. And last but not least, we have Trevor Price. Trevor Price, a 13-year veteran in the NFL, an author of several books, and president of Niru Projects. Welcome, everybody. I'm very excited to have you in the panel. So we're going to have a great discussion about the pathway to becoming a producer in animation. So I'll start off with an easy question. How did we all get into the industry? Let's start off with you, Shabrea.
Yeah, I did not know that animation was going to be a thing for me. I think, like most people, I thought I needed to be an artist to be in animation. And let me tell you, I am not. My childhood drawings are still about the same, those still hold up. But I knew I wanted to be in the film industry. And I just assumed, like most people, I wanted to be in live action. And so in my last year of college, I needed an internship to graduate. And it just so happens DreamWorks was looking for interns. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna apply and hope to God that they don't ask me for a portfolio and maybe I can weasel my way in. But I got there and I met this panel of production people and I was like, oh, duh. Yeah, obviously there's got to be people behind the scenes that are helping the artists bring these movies to the screen. And I really just was like, okay, my type A self, I don't need to be on a set for 15 hours a day like I was doing in live action. And I can still be in the film industry. Yes, yes, I want to do that. Sign me up, sign me up. And so I started as an intern on High Train Dragon 2, and the rest is history.
Excellent. And I'll also mention that Sabria is also an alumni for AfroAnimation. This is her second year with us, so we're very happy to have her
Happy
back.
to be back.
Fred, you've had a long, distinguished career. How did you get into the industry?
I stumbled in.
Mm.
I mean, I stumbled in at an old age, 40. So just quickly, I had a rock band when I was in high school. I went to college and worked in college radio. I went to work in country music radio. I stumbled into the job as at MTV. I was one of the earliest employees and co-founder. So I was a television executive. I then quit and started an ad agency and owned an ad agency for 10 years, doing branding primarily. Nickelodeon was one of my primary clients, which started introducing me to thinking about cartoons. And then when my partner and I couldn't stand each other anymore and we closed the agency, I got this call out of the blue from the man who ran Ted Turner's company. They were about to start Cartoon Network because they had just bought the legendary Hanna-Barbera cartoon studio. And it was losing $10 million a year. They hadn't had a hit since 1981 with the Smurfs. And he said, hey, maybe you should do it. And I said, I've never made cartoons. He said, oh, it couldn't, you can't lose at this. If you come in and you don't have a hit, no one will blame you. The studio hasn't had a hit in 10 years. And if you do have a hit, everyone will think you're great. So the first time I walked into that cartoon studio, having driven past it for 20 years, wondering what went on in there, I was the head of the company and I didn't know anything. That's how I got in.
Oh, excellent. Trevor, tell us how you got in the industry.
Through music. I ran a record label. So during the off season, I ran a punk rock record label called Outlook Music. And what happened was they licensed, Fox licensed one of our songs for Big Mama's House 2. It was actually my song. I did a song with an MC named Rhymefest called Private Dancer. And the president of Fox at the time, Robert Kraft, heard it and he licensed it for Big Mama's House 2. And at that time, the music industry was in New York. It was not in LA like it is now. Yeah. So you've been to a movie studio, come sign your paperwork here and I'll tour you around the studio. I've never been to a movie studio at that point. This is 2006 maybe. So I flew out to Fox and I walked into the Fox movie lot and I was like, I'm done with music. I'm doing whatever this is. And really what my goal was not to make cartoons. I want to score a picture. Okay. So I never forget the conversation we had was like, look, I want to score X-Men 2. And he was like, if you can make me quarterback of the Packers, I'll let you score X-Men 2. So I was like, well, and being kind of a jackass, I was like, well, I got to make a movie if I want to score it. So I wrote a film and Sony bought it in the room. The president bought it in the room. And I was like, well, so when do we make the score? They were like, you're going about this all wrong, my man. Right. So and they were like, you're good at it, continue. So that's how it started.
Oh, great. Fascinating. And Connie, what about you?
Oh, hi, John.
Hey.
So I moved to Los Angeles in 1990. I followed my husband out, who had always been his dream to live in Los Angeles, work in the industry. I had no dreams of working in the industry at all. I worked at an art gallery and I got to animation through art. I started taking animation classes at the Animation Union Institute, and they have really good classes there, and they're $30 a class. And I hated it. I couldn't. It was a cleanup animation class, and I was really bad at it, like epically bad. But my teacher was looking for someone to come work with her in TV animation, and she hired me to be her assistant. So I started working on Ren and Stimpy and Beavis and Butthead. It was, again, the early 90s. So digital ink and paint was brand new. It was like this new technology. So we worked in this really dark room. There was night shift and a day shift. So we were there for 24 hours doing digital ink and paint on TV shows. And that was my first job. And it's been 30 years and I'm still doing it. I must love it.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. But I started as a PA and I worked my way up. eventually I started in TV, and then I worked for 5 years in games, producing the animation for games. And then got my first job in movies at Disney in 1997, and became a department manager, and then a production manager, and then an AP. And now we've been producing for about 15 years now. So I definitely learned on the job. It's not something I went to school for.
Okay, great. So let's pivot to something that a lot of people watching are interested in, is how do I get my foot in the door? Like, how do I get into this industry? I mean, we all of us here have different divergent paths of how we got to where we are. I mean, I probably have a similar path to Connie and Shabrea, where we started off as like production assistants. You know, when I first came out of the industry, I had a degree in film studies, and I came out, and that didn't equal a job right away because, you know, it's just like an academic degree. But I hit the pavement. You know, this internet was still like relatively new in terms of trying to get like jobs, but I would apply as much as possible. And I got a job as a production assistant at a small company called Pip Animation in Ottawa. And I started to work my way up. Went from you know, PA to coordinator to production manager. Then went to another company, became a production manager, producer, and then just worked my way literally up the rung of the production ladder. Tell me about kind of your guys' experience in terms of what you did to get in the industry. What are the kind of tools or methods you use to kind of get that first foot in the door to start your path to where you are? Let's start with you, Shabria.
Yeah, I feel like my trajectory has been rather quick, so I've had to learn a lot in a short amount of time. I've only been in the animation industry for about 8 years from when I started as a little baby intern. So I got in the door, and because it was something that I had never studied in college, I was super hungry. Like there was such a like wealth of knowledge, especially working at DreamWorks with all these veterans. There was so much knowledge to be mined, and I was like, okay, great. How do I learn everything? Like, I'm like, where's my like Neo? I could download a chip. I don't like the whole like, oh, I have to like go through this experience to learn. But like, then I realized like, no, that's the only way through. And so, as I was, you know, being promoted, I started as a production assistant. That was my first official role at the studio on Home, and every step of the way I was like, no, I don't want to be promoted because I need to learn these things. I have to do every department, right? Like I need all of that information. But as I was getting promoted into these different roles, I learned that like, oh, the experience is going to come with you being in it. And so as I was going through, I'm like, okay, now this is my time to be in this department. How much can I learn about how to run this department and how this department fits within the scope of making a feature? And so like all of this knowledge has really kind of prepared me for where I am now. And so going from production assistant to coordinator to production supervisor, I had then decided I wanted to switch over to I had done mostly back end departments, and I decided, you know, like I want a fully rounded experience here. So I decided to move over to story edit, and that was my first time doing that on Abominable. And I was so close to just the filmmaking process. Like in back end, like, you know, the movie is pretty much figured out most of the time, hopefully. So when you're in lighting, you're really just like, okay, how can we manufacture? Like, we're just getting this done. But then going on the flip side and being in the story department where you are really seeing it come to life from literally nothing. Definitely a culture shock for me, because I'm like, what are the deadlines? What are we working towards? And like, oh, we'll do a screening and then we'll just like do it all over again. So that was hard for me, but I also got to see just that process of a story really coming to life. And then what I also tell people is people think that, oh, because I didn't study animation in college, like how can I do this? You don't realize how much your experience is actually relevant. I tell people all of the time. My experience working at Disneyland for a few years has contributed to my knowing how to people manage more than any class could ever teach me. So I tell people, I'm like, oh, you have customer service experience. That tells me that you know how to work within friendly professionalism. Oh, you worked on a sports team. You understand the importance of collaboration and teamwork. So really it's about like honing in on the experience that you've gained and how you can make that relevant to your job. All of it. I mean, being a producer is a lot of soft skills. It's your attributes and knowing how to talk to people. and it's strategic thinking. It's not a lot of like, oh, I need to take these classes and I need to study these specific hard skills. So that's kind of helped me.
And that's an excellent point, because a lot of what it takes to be successful in this industry is bringing the skills you have in life to the job.
Absolutely.
That interpersonal skills, learning to get along with people, working as a team, working towards a goal. All these are skills that you really can invest in and leverage in your career. Shabria, there was something interesting when I was doing an interview you did with Animation Magazine. You were talking about the idea of feeling like you're not being ready, and not to let that feeling stop you from taking risks. So why don't you expand on that a little bit? And some examples of like, because that happens to me, it happens to a lot of people, where you're like, am I ready for that promotion? Should I try to get that bigger job? And I think that to be successful, you need to take a little bit of risk. And sometimes it's getting out of your comfort zone. So why don't you talk a little bit about that statement you had about the idea that just because you don't feel ready does not mean you shouldn't take that leap.
Right. Me feeling at this pristine moment in my career, still feeling not ready. So yeah, I can speak to that. I talk a lot about just like imposter syndrome and like being a Black woman in this industry and feeling like, I don't know, do I fit in? Is this the place for me? Do I know what I'm doing? I don't know what I'm doing. And what has been great for me is like turning that imposter syndrome into, okay, how can I prove to myself that I belong here? And how can I then like work my ass off to show that like, yes, you are capable of doing this. And sometimes I tell people this a lot, you don't realize that you're doing it until you're actually doing it. There are moments over the last year of producing where in the beginning I was like, oh, I don't know if I can do this. And then I look up and I get out of a meeting and I'm like, who said that? Was that me? I did that? And so having like that ability to push through and be like, if you're feeling less confident in something, okay, let's write down those things. What are those things? What is it exactly that you feel not confident in? And now how can you go and make yourself feel more confident in that? Like really push yourself. Like it's less about proving it to other people and proving to other people that you're ready, but proving to yourself. So I've had to do a lot of that over my duration in animation.
It seems to be working. Let's jump to you, Trevor. You kind of put your hand up when we're talking about the sports skills and how it applies to production.
I was like, yeah, I've done that.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. So like many of the skills, like, I played high school football. So many of the skills you learn, like teamwork, strategy, leadership, you learn that playing sports. It doesn't have to be football; it could be any sport. But how do you apply kind of the lessons you learn on the field in your career to kind of what you do? I mean, you're like CEO of a company, you manage people. Like, how do those skills that you learn in your previous job apply to where you are now?
I think two things I want to talk about. First, I want to go back to. I think most of the people that are watching this are trying to figure out how you get into the business. First of all, so my path I can't really talk about because. When you're a professional athlete, everybody will answer the phone once, because what I was doing was in my off seasons, I would call the president of any media company I want to call, and they'd pick up the phone.
Yeah,
they'd pick it up one time. You better have something intelligent to say, or else they won't pick it up a second time. So I made sure I had something intelligent to say. So my path is, I'm not going to talk about my path. I'm going to talk about your path. And one of the things I have realized what you all need to do, and I'll tell you a story, is say yes. Just say yes. Don't worry about anything else. Say yes. Whatever comes your way. Pretend like you were waiting for this. Pretend like you know it. Pretend like, yeah, that's easy. And like Shabrea said, you will figure it out. When we hire people here. But the skill set where we are is not quite as high as it is where you guys are, because it never needed to be. We are the only animation studio for 500 miles, right? But the mindset is real high. And if your mindset's real high, I can deal with your screw ups because you've come at this with the right tone and tenor, and that's the most important thing to me. That's the most important thing of being a producer. But I'll give you an example. So we are doing something with Cartoon Network called Nehru Projects, and Nehru Projects is a development deal that I signed with Cartoon Network that was just to be for me, and it's supposed to be 6 projects. So I pitched 6 things. Like a couple of days after I got the thing, and it was like, they were like, these suck. I was like, what do you mean? Who are you talking to? Right? And I was like, what do I do now? Like, I don't have anything else. So I came out with this idea. I said, well, I'll come up with 3 more and give 3 more away of these spots to people I know in my studio or people I know. And my wife was like, you can't do that because yours is going to be the one that gets picked. And if yours gets picked, you're an asshole, right?
Right.
So keep them all or give them all away. So I gave them all away. But the point of the story is, and the six creators I found them on LinkedIn. 2 of them I knew. The rest of the ones I just searched on LinkedIn, and they had a great website. Or in one case, she's not a great artist, but her presentation was very professional. And I was like, and she joined Women in Animation, which I did not know existed. And I was like, what's Women in Animation? And she lives out in this part of the world in PG County. So I was like, of course, you're already halfway there. You're already a producer. If you've joined that and you've taken that step by yourself out in the middle of nowhere, I was like, I want to make you a star. Come over here with me, right? And now she's in Variety magazine. Great. But what I will say, one artist that I contacted, and this is my point, everybody, and I'll be quiet. My point is, one of the artists I contacted, she's a published author, and like Simon and Schuster, a preschool book. It is spectacular, and I know for a fact, Cartoon Network would have made her show into a preschool show. I don't need it is that easy to see. So when I emailed her, I said, hey, this is Trevor Price. I'm at OV Effects. We're in the city. We're doing some development. Do you want to participate? You know what she wrote me back and said? Hey, I don't know anything about this. Can you tell me more about the studio? I never emailed her back.
Okay. Yeah.
Use Google, and then you say yes.
Yes, exactly.
Any opportunity that comes your way, because you have no idea what's going to happen again. One of the kids, I said, hey, send her the same email. She sent back a response that said, anything you need from me, I'll do. I was like, I'm going to make you a star, right? So if you want a piece of advice from me, say yes. Also, the 5 people you see on the screen, like we're the lucky ones. Talk with each other. Produce with each other. You want to be a producer? Go produce. Just because you don't work at Cartoon Network or DreamWorks doesn't mean you're not a producer. Go produce, make something, right?
Absolutely.
I can throw a rock and hit a concept artist where I live.
Yeah.
You can't work here unless that concept walks. If it walks, you're a producer. Come work here. So that's what I'd say. So that's what I want to.
And that's a great point, Trevor. I mean, there are so many opportunities in our world today to produce your own stuff. There's so much technology.
Infinite.
That's what democratized the process.
Infinite.
And usually as a producer, like I don't always look at, well, what school do you go to, or what what are your credentials? But if you have like a short film you've done or something that demonstrates the ability that I'm looking for, that puts you at the top of the list. So
100%.
you don't have to always do that traditional go to school, go to internship, but there's different ways to climb a mountain and demonstrating your ability. Go ahead, Fred.
There are hundreds of thousands of individuals who have created animation channels on YouTube. All it takes is an email address, and there are 2.5 billion people every month waiting to see what you have. And this was unheard of when each one of us was coming up. I had to beg people who had companies that took tens of millions of dollars to build to let me get coffee for them. Right? And it cost a fortune to make every single thing I ever made of somebody else's money. And now with $25 and a phone, you can produce animation at world-class level at home if you're so inclined and motivated.
FAX.
So I just wanted to make your point about opportunity.
Oh, for sure. And if you don't know how to do it, there are tutorials online of how to do everything you want. You can.
I don't know how to do it now.
Yeah.
I have none of the skill. I have literally none of the skills that any of you have. I can't do your job.
I'm with you, Fred. No, I'm with you. Me and you.
No, but you could at least play football.
I
cannot do any of the things that anybody here does. And I've never been able, I haven't had a skill since I'm 26 years old.
That's a great story.
I hardly believe that, Fred.
Well,
trust me, I am not joking. And one thing for everyone who's listening and watching to know is that if you go into IMDb and copy down every single person who has the title producer. Every single one of us does a different job, and we do it differently.
Mhm.
Right? And some people have skill sets. They're artists, they're producers, they're directors, they're actors, they're football players. Like everyone has a different set of things that they do to do their job. And I'm telling you, the one that I have, I'm at the front of the line of in Hollywood, nobody knows anything. Right? And I'm 70 years old. I just started a new company. And thank God I hired two people who are 40 and 50 years younger than me who know things.
I mean, like, it's interesting, Frank, because you actually do have an interesting skill set you bring to the table. You have helped build a lot of careers of some of the top people in the animation industry. For example, someone David Feiss. I've worked with David Feiss on one of my previous films. He's one of the best directors I've ever worked with.
He's amazing.
He's great to work with. When you're looking for investing in that kind of talent, let's say like a new producer or a new coordinator or a new artist or someone like that, what are the things that go through your head to identify, like, this is someone I want to invest in? This is a person that I think can go somewhere. What are the skills you look for, or just kind of like information on that? So for our viewers watching, they can kind of take some lessons from the things that make them maybe stand out in a pile or in a line on a list.
Well, you know, in every job, it's radically different. But I'll tell you a great story about a guy who got in, who taught me something in the process. In the old days, Nickelodeon Studio, when I was working there, they used to do tours for kids, and they would have various tour guides. And one day there was a great tour guide. He had done a favor for me and shown somebody around. And I went to say thank you. And I said, hey, how did you become a tour guide? He said, oh, well, you know, there was a job listing and I went for it. I said, did you always want to be a tour guide? And he goes, oh no, I'm an animation artist. I said, okay, I'm confused. Why are you a tour guide? He said, well, you know, I'm not good enough yet. I said, I'm still confused. What? And he said, you know, I want to be good enough. I want to work. And I figured anything that could get me in the door where I could meet people who could help me do something, I would do it. I said, oh, you mean if there had been a janitor job? Yes, I would have taken that. If there had been a coffee service job, yes, I would have taken. Receptionist, yes. Assistant, yes. And that was, you know, every one of us in our own way, as we got started, we did things that were like that. I used to sneak in to recording sessions because I really wanted to be a record producer. And I had no idea what a record producer did. All I knew was I wasn't one of the Beatles, and I had heard of their producer. Oh, I'll do that. I like the microphones. I like the, you know, like, so when I look for somebody who has that look, like that they have to do it. Because I will tell you, about the only thing that I bring to the table is I don't know what else I would do. It's the only thing like that I wanted to do, other than be one of the Beatles, and I couldn't be.
I have a story. I have a story like that, Fred. So we're doing a reboot of my property with motion capture, performance captures. Now imagine we are doing this here, and we're filming it the same way Avatar's filmed. So we have a guy here that is one of the world's foremost experts in performance capture and facial wear and all these things. And the way we're making our movie, he has to explain things in a third grade way to me, because it is basically like launching a rocket downstairs. And that's fine. But how do you think he became that? He was an animator in my studio, and I walked around and I said, hey, you go learn performance capture. And I went to my office. This was 3 years ago. And now he's one of the world's experts at it. And I don't know how long he's going to be here. And that's how it happens. Like Fred's talking about, you, what are you? I'm an animator. Why are you not animating, right? So, and that happens all the time. It happens all the time when you get a random call or email from some dude with a studio in Maryland that says, I'm doing something with Cartoon Network. The 6 people I picked, one of them is 16 years old, right? Like, he'd never get called by Cartoon Network. but now he talks to the president. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
those opportunities will come, and like Fred said, if you have that look in your eye, and like I say, your mindset is more important than your skill set. Your skills, you will learn everything. I promise. We've had people quit when they see the stuff. I'm like, okay, we're gonna hire you, 2D artist. Homeboy showed up, looked at the stuff. He was like, I don't know how to do this, and left. We were like, hold on, my man, we'll figure it out. But if you listen to us, that's what it is. Just go, and you put that look in your eye. At some point, if somebody like us doesn't discover you, you will become somebody like us. We're not aliens.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we all didn't have a job at one point. I mean, I had a job. But I'm saying we all didn't have a job at some point. So
absolutely.
This is a short leap. It's not as wide as y'all think it is. It's a short jump.
But
go ahead.
I just want to say, but can we also acknowledge how important it is to have sponsors like you guys
Absolutely.
who are telling these people, hold up, take the path, just do the thing, and I promise it will lead to where you want to be. Again, speaking of my experience of every step of the way, I was like, I don't think I'm ready for that promotion. But I had leadership who was like, you'll be fine. You'll figure it out. And of course I did, because fear of failure. Fear of failure. But if it wasn't for those people being like, no, you're going to be fine, just go do it. I wouldn't have known. I would have been turning it down left and right.
Me too. I got every promotion along the way. I wasn't ready to be a coordinator. I wasn't ready to be a
we all did.
Manager. I wasn't ready to be a production manager. But you have those mentors along the way that say, yeah, you are ready. Take those risks, like John was saying. I remember after 11 years at Disney Feature Animation, which is a very structured, studio, wonderful studio, very structured inside, and risk taking, was scary to do because the roles were so defined. And I had a performance review with my boss, and she said, everything good. And at the end, she said, you need to take more risks. And I was like, really? At Disney? You want me to take risks? And she was so right. And, that was kind of the impetus that got me from production manager to producing. And the huge turn. Yeah.
Go ahead.
My wife was in the record business, and she worked for one of the biggest record companies, for one of the most storied record company presidents. And that company was part of Warner, what was then Warner Communications. And this guy, he was nuts. The things that he ended up doing at the company were amazing. But one day he comes back, the head of Warner Communications, the founder, was a guy called Steve Ross. And he comes, my wife was telling me this story. The boss comes down from his big boss, Steve Ross, looking like he had been socked in the jaw. And she said, Bob, what's wrong? Well, I went in and I told Steve what I wanted to do. And he goes, Bob, you don't dream big enough. You have to dream bigger. Ooh. This was already the president of one of the most successful record companies in history, being told he didn't dream big enough. This is to Connie's point.
Yeah.
He had, I'm telling you, this guy got fired from a company he started because of embezzlement. He knew how to dream, and he wasn't dreaming big enough for the big boss.
I tell people when they first come here, if I have to push you, I have to fire you. I have one rule. If I have to push you, you can't work here, right? And it's something I live and die by. If you are just kind of just doing the work, get out the seat. I need somebody. Now, what has happened is now I get a bunch of foolishness, and I'm like, okay, draw it back a little bit. You know what I mean? That was when you have 10 people. When you have 60 people, you get the nonsense. But anyway, but it is something I live by, right? This is like the great poet laureate Drake said, we play an opinion sport. It's an opinion. I like this shade of green. I like 2 more shades of green. It's an opinion, man. This is not math, right? So you're a producer. You're a producer. Like everybody said, take them chances. Number 2, go produce. Number 3, push. The enormous animated content. So go look at the kid screen thing. Look at AfroAnimation. There's a gazillion of it. Push. Just push.
Yeah.
So-
go ahead, Connie. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, John.
No problem.
Trevor just made me think of when I first got promoted from production manager to associate producer. I was sitting with my boss, and he was taking me through the projects. Like, here's our list of projects, and I was taking, studios notes. I got it. Okay, great. And I was like, so what do you need me to do? And he was quiet for a while, and then he goes, here's how this is going to work. You go do everything except the things you tell me I've got to do. Like,
That was a great boss.
Yeah.
and sort of, I was like, oh, like a little paradigm, light bulb went on. It was like, okay, I have to drive all of these. That's my job. And then I point and shoot my boss where like, oh, I picked up the phone and I couldn't get something to happen. Could you pick up the phone and make that help me make that happen? But it was amazing, and it was very empowering. It was very freeing and exciting, because I was like, oh, like permission, to go, just go do it, and I did, and it was super fun.
And you must have learned a lot about the job and yourself and your ability, and that must have built your confidence.
And I was ready for it. So again, I had been at Disney Feature Animation for 11 years. I learned a lot. That was like graduate school in animation. But, so I had lots of information I was ready to really use. So I don't think, if it had been my second or third year in animation and I was a coordinator, somebody saying, you go do everything, I would have been like, oh.
But you say yes, because that's what Trevor says.
You say yes.
Yeah.
Well,
Sure.
Always.
Sure. And never turn down a meeting. Never turn down.
Absolutely.
Someone like me, who I'm invited to everything. Hey, you want to go? Yep. Hey, you want to go? Sure. What do I got to do? Yep, sure. You want to? Yes. You want to speak at AfroAnimation? Sure. Whatever.
Yes.
You just say yes, man.
I'm old enough that my first job, was way before there was something like email or internet. So I get my first job in television. I know nothing. Literally, I had made 2 commercials, and I got hired almost by accident, I think. So I'm in essentially a corporation, and there's memos. So I went and introduced myself to everyone in the company. And I said, by the way, could you copy me on your memo so I know what's going on? Because I didn't really understand what anyone did for a living. And within about a month, everyone thought I was important because I was copied on every memo.
That's great. Yeah,
So
write that down, everybody. Write it down.
Right.
That's a
And
very
I
good
started
one.
getting invited to every meeting. They made sure I was in, and I was like the tallest guy, and I wore a suit because you had to wear a suit at this company. So they actually thought I was important. And to your point, Trevor, I went to every meeting. And I had nothing to say, but boy, I learned a lot in that process that has never left me, because I was willing, back to this notion of not knowing anything. I was I've never known anything in any job I went to. So I just go, like when I got into animation, I was so scared being president of the company that I didn't sit at my desk for the first 6 months. I just sat on the couch in the office, and I told everybody I didn't know anything. I said, why don't you just tell me what to do?
Right.
And they didn't want to be told. They worked in a studio that everyone had been told what to do for years.
Yeah.
So a lot of people just quit because they wanted me to tell them what to do. And eventually, I guess the people that stayed were willing to tell me what to do.
Wasn't that the plot of The Last Samurai with Tom Cruise, where the young kid, the young emperor, was like, telling me what to do? He's the emperor. So it happens. I walk around going, hey guys, what are we doing today? I sit in my office. I have no idea what the people here are doing. But I see stuff on the Slack, and I see this, and I'm just like, yeah, do that. But again, it is challenging yourself. Always, if you challenge yourself, you are producing, right? So it's always very, it's always very, very, it's kind of in front of you if you just grab it. Because I'll tell you a story. I had a manager one time when I first got into the Hollywood thing. I had a manager named Max Burgos, and I asked Max one day, Max, because I was pitching movies that were getting rejected, and that's the next thing we're going to talk about is rejection, because we just got passed on something today. And the kid that just got passed on in my studio, and she had a nervous breakdown, and she just quit. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna let you sauce that off for a little bit. But I said to him, I said, Max, how do I make a movie? You know what this MFer said to me? You get some lights and a camera. What are you talking about? And but that's not what I was. I wasn't asking that. I was asking, how do I get Warner to fund my movie? But that wasn't the answer he gave me. He gave me the real answer. So you want to produce? How do I be a producer? You get lights and a camera and go produce.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, start developing those skills. Okay, so we have some questions from our audience. So Douglas Sweeper asks, do we have any advice for someone who's looking for entry-level positions and internships, but is postgraduate? So, okay, Connie, go ahead.
Okay, so when I was, after I had that first job, there was a little gap in I didn't have my second job. And so what I started doing was just taking people to coffee, like asking people who I knew in the industry, can I take you to coffee and buy you a cup of coffee? And then I would just ask them information like I'm looking for something. Is there an internship or a PA, or do you just need help in the office for a few weeks? And, and they would say, oh, well, I don't, but there's another person. And then I would take them to coffee. And I spent a few months just doing that, informational interviews.
Networking.
And
I've been doing that for 40 years.
Exactly. You never stop doing it. You never stop. And it was interesting because it may not bear fruit like immediately, but those conversations you had, those relationships you build eventually do. Like, it's such a small world, and you bump into people later and you work together later. So, and eventually, obviously I got a job and was able to build on that. But, you just get out there and talk to people, just meet people and talk to people.
I'd only add to that to organize it. I've only had JOBs for like 10 years. Most of the time I've worked for myself. But when I had jobs and I had to find another job, and sometimes I had to do it, when I had family and mortgage and all that type of stuff, and I didn't know what to do. I'm really bad. I grew up in a mom and pop store, so I never had to find a job. So when I was older and had to find a job, it was very daunting. So what I did is I made sure that once a week I would have one lunch that had nothing to do with the job and everything to do with someone that I thought maybe if I told them something, they could help me. And at the end of every lunch, I'd go, do you know someone else I should have lunch with? And I had lunch like that once a week for almost a year. And at the end of that process, the gig came to me. I didn't do anything to find it. I didn't know how to this day, I don't know how to find a show or how to sell the show other than I just had lunch with somebody from a no one from Netflix wants to return my calls. Truly.
John, get on that. Come on.
It's so ridiculous.
I'll call you back, Fred.
So I had lunch with a super junior guy the other day. And he's asking me for advice. That's great. One day he'll call me and go, I need this show made. Can you help me? Right? So
go ahead, Fred.
I'm 70. I'm happy to take a 20-year-old to lunch. Because one day they will do something for me.
Yeah.
That's a good, absolutely.
I have another piece of advice. Today's assistant, tomorrw president. I've seen it.
Bingo.
It happens,
And
so
Douglas, you know what I would do if I were you? If you're watching, forget the president. Don't worry about that person. Find their assistant. Because that person is likely your age. If you're post grad, I'm gonna make up an age. I'm gonna make assumptions. 25 years old. Whoever's sitting on that person's desk is 25 years old. and I'm telling you, it's in there for a reason. I just had a girl that I hired from Morgan State. Came here to help me with the Cartoon Network thing. Said she's going on vacation in LA. She now works at DreamWorks, right? And her name is Shanice Lee.
I love Shanice.
Worked for me. I called Peter. I was like, hire Shanice. And Shanice called back. She said, I got the job. I was like, of course you did, right? So,
that makes me so happy.
Right? So what I'm saying is, Shanice is somebody Doug gets to talk to because Shanice is going to be in a position of power one day because she was focused. And that's where you go. You find your peers.
Yeah.
Find your peers. I can't hang out with Shanice. I have to hang out with Fred and John and Connie because they're somewhat my age, and so we're all kind of
bet.
So find those people. It doesn't have to be executives. It can be assistants, PAs. Trust me. But
yes,
because I'm trying to answer the questions, right? Find a little fire, a little family, and y'all get after it.
Yeah, and shoot your shot on LinkedIn. Like
exactly,
truly, I have met so many people via LinkedIn who are now like my mentees. There are some who I've met through like organizations like Rise Up Animation, Black and Animated, who I've then like recommended them to recruiters and have gotten hired. So like it's all about like making these connections with people, and then also what you're saying is like being tailored in reaching out to them. Don't just be like, hey, can you get me a job? That's probably not gonna work. I'm telling you that.
Yeah.
But coming to me and be like, hey, I saw you in this panel and I was very interested in this. Like you may very well get a better response from someone if you go for something specific that they've done, and being very specific about what it is that you're looking for. Hey, can I get 15 minutes because this is what I want to talk about. Like we don't have a lot of time to go through 100 messages, so like be to the point about what you need.
And even a 5-minute conversation opens the door. I mean, like, at the end of the day, it's human to human connections.
Yeah.
And if you take an effort to make a connection with a human being, you'll get probably 50 no's.
Oh my God,
yes is all you need to start to build that network.
Yeah.
And like Trevor said, the person you're talking to, the PA you're talking to, the person you help, one day might be the CEO of DreamWorks.
I can't wait for someone to hire me. Like all these PAs I've met, I'm like, okay, I'm on returns in 20 years.
Those are, believe me, if you're trying to get the business, that's the gatekeeper. I'm telling you, I've done it myself. I watched the kid who runs Fox right now. She was my agent's assistant, and I told her, I said, you're going to be president of that company one day. And lo and behold.
Exactly.
And the flip side of what Trevor said about saying yes, I return every email. I talk to anyone who wants to see me. I probably spend half of every day talking to people who have nothing to do with anything that I'm doing at any given moment, and sometimes they come from all businesses and all that. But here's the best email I ever received. Guy writes to me, I just graduated from Savannah College of Art. I wanted to tell you because when I was 11, I emailed you and you emailed me back. And I started crying.
Yeah.
And you emailed me back, and that gave me the thing to like go and get into this college.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so everybody's asking about how to be a producer. Well, you not only have to say yes to everything, you have to be open to everything, and you have to encourage everybody in every way that you can. Mm-hmm. One of the earliest development executives that gave me advice when I was trying to figure out how to I was a promo guy. I made promos and I wanted to be a producer. And he said, well, every person that comes in and pitches you something, even if it's terrible, the next thing they do, that might be the biggest show in history.
Right.
You have to always treat them well enough that they want to come back and see you.
Yeah.
And so whether that's somebody who's 11 years old or it's somebody who's 50 years old, like, please, I go to bed every night frightened that somebody isn't going to show up and show me something that is special.
Yeah. That's cool.
I need them more than they need me. They do
Facts.
not need me,
Facts. Say it every day. Yo,
right? I sweat every day that the right person isn't going to show up, because I might not have a skill, but if I have a talent, it's understanding who the right person is. I learned that when I was trying to make jazz records and I didn't know what I was doing. And I was working with all Black Americans as a skinny white kid from the suburbs who knew nothing about what they did. And somebody said, don't worry about it. Just put the right person in the room. They'll take care of everything else.
I have a thing, I say it all the time. I have a thing for stray animals, right? So when I check our catch-all email, and I catch a kid who found us and took the time to email a catch-all email their entire world, I email them back personally. I said, "You are now my personal project. I need to show up in the studio tomorrow," and they always show up, and they're so enamored that somebody gives them time. So if you want to be a producer, give people time. Do that.
So we're about out of time, but some big takeaways is that to get your foot in the door, it doesn't necessarily always have to be a production role. You know, deliver coffee, deliver mail, you know, find a job within that institution that puts you in the right room to hear right things and learn. Network, that's a huge thing. LinkedIn's a tool to use. Email 50 people, you know, you'll get one person. Don't say I want a job. Ask for, can I get 5 minutes of your time? I'm really curious to see how you got to where you got in your career. You know, these are important things you guys can do to get in the industry. And like, as Trevor said, as Fred said, you work, as Shabraya and Connie said, we've all said, you work at it, you have the passion, you have the fire, you have that glint in your eye of where you want to go. There will be people that will notice it and will lift you up. You know, so you just have to kind of take a leap of faith, believe in your abilities, and you can make it. This industry is huge, it's growing, it's global, and it's getting increasingly diverse every year. And this festival is a demonstration of it. I mean, we've doubled the amount of people that have participated from last year. There's a hunger out there, and you guys just have to take a leap of faith and do that work, and the universe will open up those opportunities for you.
And we need your voice. We need
your
voice.
Absolutely.
Oh, definitely. This industry needs women and Black Americans more than any other groups of people. I know women is a giant group of people comparatively, but the industry has blocked out Black Americans and women for almost 100 years. Now's the time. Now is the time.
Yeah.
And John, I hope you're moderating a lot of other panels. You've been fabulous.
Thank you.
One of the best moderators I've ever had.
My only panel, but I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody. I'd like to take one more second to recognize our sponsors. Cinesight, the Cartoon Network, and DreamWorks Animation. Thank you so much for sponsoring this festival. Thank you to my panel. It was an excellent conversation. And, hey, people out there watching, send me a message on LinkedIn if you want to talk more, want some interested. Send it to any one of us in the panel.
Same.
We practice what we preach. We will open doors for you. Just reach out. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. And I'm going to pass it back to Rio.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, panel. You know what? I feel like when my son was 5 years old, every year he'd say, "This is my favorite age. I love being 5. I love being 6." And now I feel like every time I see a panel, it's my favorite panel. That producer panel dropped a lot of knowledge. Fred, you are an industry vet. We were rolling back here with some of the stuff you were saying. You have a great sense of humor, but we saw and heard the seriousness in the things you were suggesting. Shabraya, lovely to see you again. Congratulations on your promotion. I hope every year you come back to AfroAnimation and you keep moving up the ladder. You keep saying yes. Connie, I know it's late there in the UK, but thank you so much. Again, love hearing from the women. And John, we found the right panel for you. You've been a second-year alum, and we're so grateful that you're back. But that was masterful. We really appreciate it. And Trevor, congratulations. If anybody wants to look up Trevor Price, Pryce, and Cartoon Network, you'll see the announcement that came out yesterday with his deal with Cartoon Network. We didn't talk about it a lot, but you want to talk about a studio that is investing in underserved communities. And you see Trevor, who's walking the walk and talking the right talk. So we are so grateful. We're coming up on our last panel of the day, and we love to end AfroAnimation with knowledge about where to fund your project, because it's lovely to talk to major studios, independent studios, about what it takes to get in the door. It's lovely to hear from Lucasfilm about getting in the door, Lucasfilm about behind the Bad Batch. But at the end of the day, there are so many independent creators who are like, I live outside of the United States, or my project is not in a place where I feel comfortable pitching yet. So we're going to end the day with a panel called Fan Base Community Building, Kickstarting / Bootstrapping Tips for Creators. And it's basically a lot of knowledge about people who are in it, grinding every day and trying to fund their independent project. So we're excited to welcome that panel in just a moment. Last little bit of housekeeping. If you go left, folks that are on the Hop-In platform, to the booths, the voting for the best short film or favorite short film is about to close. So you have a few minutes to go in and take a look at some of these fantastic films. And if even you don't get a chance to vote, we welcome you to watch them, because there's some phenomenal work coming out of a bunch of different countries. Again, we had over almost 500 submissions across 81 countries, and the stuff that showed up is phenomenal. Some of it I actually shed a tear. I could see it, before a Disney movie, or before a Pixar movie, or before, a Warner Animation movie. So we are excited by the work that we're encouraging. Again, just hold tight. The last panel is up, and we have our phenomenal Victor Dandridge, who, again, another AfroAnimation alum. He's going to be moderating this panel. He brings a ton of energy, and so we're excited to meet that panel. So give us just a few minutes, and as always, thank you so much for supporting AfroAnimation.